What a pass. Giddy underneath for JRE. The reverse and the rookie-to-rookie action. Outside through Dort. He'll get the flyby. 3 on the way, and he rattles it in. SGA defended closely by Westbrook. Tough. Step back. Gets up the shot. Banks it in for the lead.
This is Dort. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested Podcast. We are part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, the official podcast of SI Thunder, coming to you live Sunday, April 24th. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. Got my co-host, Nick Crane, with me.
Wow. First one to be announced. That's literally a first.
We've got JD Silva here producing for us.
Fellas.
And we have special guest on tonight. Keandre is joining us. You guys know him. He's the NBA draft guru, creating prospect scouting report videos, big boards, and mock drafts on his YouTube channel, Hoop Intellect. Also tweeting his thoughts on the NBA playoffs right now. You can also find him on Twitter at Hoop Intellect. Keandre, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Man, we are so thankful that you are here. You're officially our NBA draft coverage kickoff. Couldn't have a better guy for it. Before we get started, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to break down the Thunder's rookies who just finished up their first season. We're going to look forward to the 2022 draft. But before we dive in, gentlemen, both Nick and Keandre, I would be remiss if I did not ask you, do you think you would have been as quick as the security guard in Minnesota last night?
No chance. Literally, I don't know how that happened.
My man needs to get like a full ride scholarship to the University of Minnesota or something, because that form tag, that's linebacker technique. That was impressive.
Yeah, he had to have a lot going on in his head. He knew what was going on. He knew something was up.
He was side-eyeing her during those free throws.
Yeah, he read the play. He went ahead and got in there before anything could happen.
I love it. Real quick before we dive into to the draft coverage, serious NBA draft question, or not NBA draft, I'm sorry, NBA playoff question. Keandre, which playoff series do you think has been the most entertaining or the most surprising so far?
The most entertaining, I kind of like the drama that goes on in the Timberwolves Memphis Grizzlies series. You got everybody, Pat Bev, the Grizzlies love to talk. There's been a lot going on. The only thing I don't like about that series specifically is all the foul calls. Like, it's really drained some of these games, but that would be the one that comes to mind off the top of my head. And obviously it's tied up 2-2 as well.
Yeah, that one's been a blast so far. And so I just feel like that one is, Nick, I don't know if you agree with this. I think it's the two youngest teams in the playoffs, and seeing these rising stars, the John Morants, the Desmond Bains, the Ant Edwards, all these guys going at each other, and then cap it all off with Kat and Jaw's dads at all the games courtside, just constantly chirping at each other. It's been very entertaining.
Yeah, I like the Utah Dallas situation, just because I think there's a real chance that if Utah loses, something gets shaken up this summer, which is always fun to think about as you see these series unfold. Like, the result of these next 3 games could legitimately impact the future of the franchise in Utah.
It's very fascinating. All right, gentlemen, let's dive into some draft stuff. Keandre, my favorite thing to do, our listeners know that I teach for a living. Summer break is coming up for me. And from the start of summer break to the draft, I am glued to your YouTube channel, watching all the scouting breakdown videos, analyzing. It's funny because I watched the first half of those videos and I'm like, oh my God, this kid's going to go NBA. They're going to be insane. And then I watched the back half where you cover the weaknesses, and I'm like, holy shit, this kid can't even play in the NBA. Like, I don't even know if he can play in the YMCA down my street. And I go on these emotional roller coasters. But recently I went back and I rewatched last year's scouting videos. I don't know how many. Do you know a total number you did for 2021 as far as individual prospects?
I think we did 32, 33, 34, somewhere in that kind of range.
Wow. I can't even imagine how much work goes into each one of those. So you're putting in the time for sure. I went back and rewatched Josh Giddy's and Trey Mann's just to kind of get a feel, because I wanted to remember what people were thinking about these players that the Thunder drafted before the draft. So OKC picked up 4 players in last year's draft: Josh Giddy, Trey Mann, Jeremiah Robinson Earl at pick, I think that was 33, and then Aaron Wiggins at the very back end of the draft. I want to know, Keandre, and you choose which of those 4 we start with. But we want to pick your brain as far as, what did you think about those guys pre-draft last year, about 10 months ago? And then where are you at on them now after watching them play a full NBA season? So of those 4 guys, Keandre, which guy do you want to start with first?
Yeah, so I think we should probably start with the 6th pick, Josh Giddy. There was obviously a lot of controversy around him, and even with my own videos, because of how people kind of shared and kind of skewed things. But I think from, and for people who actually didn't get a chance to watch him before he got drafted, so he's kind of just this shaggy-haired Australian kid nobody really knows anything about. So the mind goes wherever it wants. But coming into the league, he's immediately one of the, best young passers that we've seen in the league. I think that, 2 to 3 times a game, he's going to do something that makes you get up out your chair, get up off the couch, with some of the passes that he can pull off. There's those one-hand whip passes to the corners, things of that nature. And that was all stuff that we could see, in pre-draft, coming in, what he did in the NBL last year. And then, some of the things that kind of impressed me were, obviously there's some things that he's going to have to work on in terms of shooting, some of the in-between game stuff, but he really worked on the floater. That was something that he went to quite a bit this season. His ability to, he's a really unorthodox player, so it catches a lot of people off guard. His ability to kind of finagle his way into the paint, being 6'8", is something that a lot of guards who might have the same strengths and weaknesses just aren't able to do. He kind of figured that out along, during the season. And then, obviously he won 4 Rookie of the Month awards in the Western Conference, youngest player to put up a triple-double, and he did that multiple times. He had a really good season. I think he would have been a shoo-in for the first team had he not missed that last segment of the season. Now, you've got the Herb Jones. It kind of gets Jalen Green had his run. It kind of gets, thrown in the air. But all in all, I thought he had a really nice season, and he's somebody that, you feel confident about building around. There's some things that they'll have to work through with, being on and off the ball between SGA and him, and, kind of figuring that thing out. But in general, I think Thunder fans should all be happy with what he did this year.
Before we move into the other guys, I got a question. So do you remember coming into draft night last year, who was 1 through 5 on your big board? And now that you've seen these guys play for a year, if we were going to just talk like the top 5 players in this class, when this is all said and done, how has that changed? Yeah.
So number 1, I had Cade. Obviously that was a kind of consensus guy. Number 2, we had Evan Mobley. He did what he did, a great rookie season. Even was probably a little better earlier on than I thought he'd be. Number 3, Jalen Green. And then number 4, we had Jalen Suggs. And then 5, I had Moses Moody. 6 was Scotty Barnes. So that's kind of how I gave it up last year. But in terms of thinking of like the top 5 rookies, obviously Scotty Barnes is going to be in there, or at least it looks like it. And then, from there, Jalen Suggs, he didn't have the greatest, shooting season. He's got some things to work on. But I still was intrigued by his defensive ability. He's a really good athlete. He made strides down the course of the season, had some injuries. So we'll have to see what he comes back with next year. But in terms of the top 3, that could be, Cade, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green. That could end up being the best 3. And then Scotty, like we said, and Moses Moody was a favorite of mine. We'll see what he ends up doing in this Warrior system, or where they end up moving if they trade for a piece or whatever goes on there. But that's kind of how it was.
Keandre, when you're talking about Josh earlier, you mentioned his kind of unorthodox game, especially whenever he gets into the lane, getting to the basket. You could describe Shai GilgeousAlexander's game almost the exact same way. Off-footed finishes, just kind of this herky-jerky kind of slithery type of game. Do you think two guys that kind of play that similar style as far as getting downhill, getting to the basket, not in your traditional I'm faster, stronger, bigger than you, but almost this skill level that just throws players off? Do you think those two play styles being similar are better suited to play with each other, or does it make it more of a challenge?
Well, I would say, they are enough different in terms of like potential roles. I think that you hit on, their kind of uniqueness in the way that they play the game. But obviously, Shai's a much better shooter. He, creates shots from the perimeter better. He just has more in his bag at this point, and obviously being, shorter, it kind of helps him on that too. Josh just kind of has some things that are more difficult at 6'8", at a legit 6'8" than him. But it is a thing that defenses, I'm sure, have a lot of trouble with. Shai, nobody in the league can stay in front of Shai at this point. Even though Thunder had the season that they had or whatever, and he kind of started off slow, towards the end, it was clear he's still that guy. That's a guy that's going to be a future perennial all-star and things of that nature. But yeah, when you look at, the potential versions of them, that's going to be something that defenses are going to have to really hone in on and try to pick up some of their tendencies that might be a little different than what you would normally see, at least.
Nick, if you don't have any more questions on Josh, I just have one more. I think the thing that surprised me the most with him, Keandre, once we got into the season, I think I can kind of lump all three of these things into one. Just his toughness. I call it the give an F mentality, right? Like he really gives a shit about playing basketball. The rebounding and the defense. Like I had an idea that he would be this insane passer, maybe be able to have some nice finishes and whatnot. But the toughness, the rebounding, he led the Thunder in rebounding this year, and the defense was really surprising to me. Was that something that you saw out of him pre-draft, or was that something that caught you off guard? And do you think there's a higher ceiling for him because of what he showed on that end in the NBA?
Yeah, the toughness and everything that was there. I was a little bit surprised by how he, stuck defensively at times. He's kind of caught in the middle of two positions a lot of times in the way that their lineup worked. Some nights he might be matched up with a quicker guard, and that's obviously going to give him a little bit more trouble. All rookie guards besides like Davion Mitchell are going to struggle a little bit defensively. I think that's just, you kind of got to build that in. But yeah, in terms of the rebounding, I remember there was a quote at some point earlier on in the season. He said that he wanted to work on his rebounding. But I thought that was a strength of his from the jump. He get 10 rebounds in his sleep, contested, push the break. Especially with a team like the Thunder that ran 6'9" dudes out there at center the entire season, as a very valuable asset. But in terms of his overall ceiling, I think that's going to be dictated more by what he can do in terms of individual creation, being able to more consistently put pressure on a defense, and just kind of find his spots and find the places on the court. Obviously, shoot it better as well. Over the course of his career. So that's kind of where I see his ceiling being dictated. But those other things are very valuable, and it'll be a big reason why he's going to stick around and make an impact regardless.
Awesome. All right. So Josh Giddy down. We have three other rookies to go. Keandre, who do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, so Trey Mann, of course. That was one of my favorites last year. I always say it. He is, to this day, my favorite scouting report that I've ever done. I think we're well over 100 at this point. Just his ability to create space, that was evident from the jump. You look at him at Florida, he made that big jump from his freshman year to sophomore year. Completely different player, one of the best guards in the country. Super entertaining watch. But as he got drafted, you even look at Summer League, right? He was creating all that space. He was getting to the basket. He's just not finishing. He goes out. You kind of left wondering, like, what is he going to end up being? And then he gets into the NBA season, has his ups and downs, goes to the G League. They did some interesting things with how they wanted to develop him. But over the course of the season, he had the Boston game. He had that game against Dallas. Just somebody who I think coming in pre-draft, I thought he was one of the best shot creators in the class. It was between really like him, Jalen Green, and then I'd say James Bouknight in the third, and then Cade Cunningham was in there as well. But those were kind of the top guys in my opinion. And he really showed that throughout the season. And he's somebody that I think figures into their long-term rebuilding plans a little more than maybe people would expect on paper. He's obviously not like untouchable, but I think he's someone that you really want to see in year two, especially with the improvements he made as a finisher. He was dunking on people randomly at the beginning of the season. That's not what he was doing in college. So just kind of putting all that kind of stuff together, he's somebody who's one of my favorites and somebody Thunder fans should be super excited about, to me.
In a vacuum, I know fit and situations, everything, but in a vacuum today, if you were drafting like a redraft of last year, you could go back in time. Are you taking Trey Mann or James Bouknight first?
If knowing what I know today, or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, obviously James Bouknight didn't get the chance to play. That's kind of a thing. So I would go with Trey Mann. I thought they were fairly close last year. I had Bouknight top 10, I believe. I think Trey Mann was 14. They kind of went back and forth throughout the end of the year. But yeah, I'd have to go with Trey Mann at this point. Bouknight still has a lot of things that you like, and hopefully he gets his opportunity next year. He had some good moments in the G League still too. I know Thunder fans really liked him pre-draft, and then things kind of went a different direction. But yeah, that's where I go.
That's why I ask. I think a lot of folks were expecting to hear Bouknight's name at 6 on draft night, or even hope that he falls to 16. And that was a guy that we were already talking about making Shai and Knight T-shirts. Like we had all these ideas, and then you get a guy like Trey Mann, and you start to watch him play, and you think this is the same role Bouknight would have played is the role that Trey Mann's playing.
Yep. Yeah, and they got him at 16 instead of 6. So, few things I want to talk about with Trey, Keandre. First off, the Thunder were very adamant about Trey being locked in defensively all year and being tough defensively. There were multiple times where Coach Daignault would pull Trey off the court if there was a time where he thought that he lacked toughness or he wasn't engaged defensively. Is that a place where you think we saw growth from him, from what you saw in the tape from college to now after his first rookie season? And how much of, I guess it's kind of the same question that I asked you about Josh, how much of that defensive toughness is really going to play into what Trey can ultimately be in this league? Yeah,
I think that definitely has a little bit more to do with like his overall ceiling, because coming in, that was something that was going to be, an obvious roadblock in him becoming as good of a player that he wanted to become. He looks a lot better physically than he even did a year ago. I wouldn't be, just based on his history, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another kind of jump next year even. But yeah, I thought that was a good learning lesson for him, just being able to really be locked in every possession, just knowing that you're going to come out the game. But yeah, that's obviously something that he's going to have to keep as a significant part of his development in overall game.
The other thing I wanted to ask, you broke it down in some of your videos. You've even tweeted about it in Trey's rookie year. It nearly tears my ACL just watching him do it. But these step backs that Trey has in his bag, where his knee damn near touches the ground, his shin is like parallel with the ground. Like, can you tell us what other players do you see that have that ability? And then also kind of tied into that, I know nobody likes to make like comps because they can get taken out of context, but what Trey's type of game, what type of player in the league currently do you see his role developing into? We've heard a lot of, is it Anthony Simons? Is it Jordan Poole? Is it Darius Garland? So who do you see that kind of plays like him, especially with those like crazy, just everything he has in his bag, especially that step back where, again, just watching it freaking hurts my knees and my ankles. But who else has that in their bag? And then what do you see his role in the league like as far as a comparison to another player?
Yeah, so I see Nick put it in the chat. Kemba Walker at his best. Obviously he's at a different stage of his career, but he is one of the most ridiculous and shiftiest players that I've ever seen. I think the league has ever seen. His ability to get low, just like we described with Trey Mann. I think he's just a little bit better than Trey at it. I think he's just a little more flexible in the hips and everything. But obviously, with the space that Trey creates, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, in terms of shin angles, he's ridiculous. We talked about it in the scouting report. And then the next question was comparison. So that's kind of something that's gonna be dependent on the situation, like you're talking about. Obviously, like, does Jordan Poole become Jordan Poole if he's not with the Warriors, or
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't have that kind of development patience, get to watch Steph and Clay and everything. But in terms of like game, I think I compared him to Darius Garland in the scouting report. I think obviously is before he kind of made that jump, because now obviously All-Star, that's a little bit loftier, but
yeah, we're talking pre-2021 Darius Garland.
Yeah. So just thinking about what he can do as a shot creator, obviously he's going to be able to score points in the league. I think it's just everything else. How good of a defender does he become? How good of a passer can he develop into? Those are just some other things. I think that he's going to be able to get you 16 to 20 points at his best, just regardless. I think that's the type of talent that he is. But ceiling beyond that, we just kind of got to wait and see, especially after year 2.
For sure. One interesting thing, you guys both mentioned Kemba as the guy that has that same style, especially with the shin angles and whatnot. And Keandre, you said Kemba might just be a hair better at it, but then Trey's got like 5 inches on Kemba as well, and I think that there's a balance there. I think I take the five extra inches of height in that scenario. So Thunder also selected 2 guys in the second round. We can move a little bit quicker on these guys, but let's just keep moving down the draft order. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Keandre, thoughts on him pre-draft, and then kind of where you're at on him now.
Yeah, so Jeremiah Robinson Earl, he was somebody who was a top 40 candidate for me, somebody who's going to immediately come in and make an impact. Played a lot of minutes at center, which I didn't really see coming, but that was just how the Thunder gave it up this year. They said, we're going to go with Derek Favors and rookie Jeremiah Robinson Earl at center, and, whoever else throughout the season we happened to pick up. So that was just kind of a thing of it. But, rock solid role player, somebody who can come in and contribute defensively. The thing I really liked to see out of him was he was shooting a 3. He shot about 35% from 3, and that was something that we wanted to see him stretch his game out, be able to more easily contribute to an NBA offense, and he did that. So, he had a really nice season before he had those injuries. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with the rest of this group, kind of being that glue guy, somebody who I could see being in OKC for a long time as a high-level contributor.
You mentioned the 3-point shooting, 3.4 attempts a game for him this season. Does that number surprise you based off pre-draft stuff? And do you expect that to stay roughly even throughout his career? Or do you think he's going to start spacing and shooting even more?
Well, that'll probably be, dictated off of his minutes, because how many can you really get up in a certain amount of time? But I wouldn't know. I don't know if I would say I was surprised. I felt like that was something that was going to be a point of emphasis of his, but it was just good to see, okay, he's making that concerted effort to get out there. But at his best, I think you can somewhere between the 3 to 5 range, depending on, how many minutes he gets. He's probably going to be one of the first guys off the bench, I would guess, is his kind of career role placement, but that's where I would see it.
Gotcha. And then let's move on to the last guy real quick. Aaron Wiggins, taken 55th overall, initially signs a two-way, gets it converted to a 3-year deal, the Lou Dort special with a whole bunch of non-guarantees in there. Did you even, I mean, he goes 55th, and you said you did like 33, 34 scouting videos. Is he somebody you guys even dove into during the scouting process last year? And obviously you looked at him, but is he a guy you got really deep into, and what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, we didn't really have the time to go super in depth, obviously. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident he was in one of those last big boards towards the end. He might have actually been 60. I know that he had this great run in the combine, and kind of used that momentum to end up getting drafted 55th and coming into this Thunder program. So, but yeah, he was a good contributor at Maryland. Obviously, guy who had potential to come in and contribute on the wing. His ability to defend, shoot it a little bit. He shot, I think, 30% this year, which isn't great, but just being able to do a couple of different things on the court, kind of fill gaps as well, kind of like Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He had some really big time games and defensively, really shined at times throughout the season, guarding some players that you wouldn't necessarily expect, those late second round picks to guard. And I think he's listed at 6'4", but he plays a lot bigger. You would probably guess he's about 6'7". That's just how he plays. But yeah, I really liked what he did, and he's another guy who can easily just fit into what the Thunder are doing. You don't have to get him shots. You don't have to get him high minutes. He's going to come in and contribute in his limited minutes and figure it out.
He seems very moldable to me. He can fit into really whatever role you need him to play. And I think part of that is he's an older rookie as well. And so kind of a little more physically mature than some of these other guys as well. Let's take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, and then on the other side, we'll get Keandre's thoughts on the 2022 draft class. What's up, Thunder fans? This is Jacob from the Uncontested Podcast, and I'm here to let you know that we have fully redesigned our merch store to get you the best Thunder swag available. Just visit cottonbureau.com and search the Uncontested Podcast to find all of our new designs. That's cottonbureau.com and search the Uncontested Podcast to find new drops like Josh Giddy's Wizard of Oz or an ode to the Trey Man Step Back. We've also got all the classics like Dortal Combat, Liu Tang Clan, and everyone's favorite MVP, Shai GilgeousAlexander. The best part? You can get any design and the style of apparel you want. So if you're gearing up for the summer and want a tank top, needing a hoodie for the winter in Australia, or you're wanting a Pokemon onesie for your baby, we've got you covered. Make sure to go to cottonbureau.com and search the Uncontested Podcast to get your new Thunder gear today. All right. Time to move on to the 2020 class, Keandre. We got a handful of just generic questions about the class, and then we'll get into some Thunder-specific stuff as well. First thing, though, what are just your overall thoughts on this class? Obviously, everyone thinks 2021 is what was, and then now seeing these guys is a really special class. Not really comparing this class to last year, but just where are you at overall with this class?
Yeah, so obviously, just because of time, they ended up being the class that comes after 2021. That's obviously not the greatest thing when you talk about comparisons. People all automatically start thinking, who's Cade Cunningham, who's Evan Mobley, where's our Scotty Barnes in this draft? That's probably not going to happen. But in general, I kind of like it. I like the amount of guys who could play the 4 spot. I think that's kind of interesting and unique with this class. You don't really see that every year. I think there's a ton of them throughout the lottery and then throughout the rest of the draft as well. So that'll be something to watch going forward. But yeah, in general, I like it. Everybody always wants to be like, is this class or is it this class. Is it going to be 2017 or whatever? That's kind of just something you kind of have to wait and see. You make your projections, but you won't officially know until everybody gets in the league.
Have you started to build tiers? I know last year, it's maybe like a two-part question. There was the top 5, and then there was like a drop-off. Although late, Scotty Barnes kind of rose above. I think on lottery night, when Oklahoma City got 6, it was a consensus. All right, Scotty Barnes, probably could be member of the Thunder. He ends up going 4. So I guess two-part, like I said, what are the tiers in your eyes at this point for the actual lottery? And then where is that line where it's, these guys have superstar potential. These guys, you're probably reaching a little bit further.
Yeah, so at the top of the draft, you've kind of got those top 4 that people have been talking about all year long. So it's Paulo, you've got Chet, Jabari Smith Jr., Jaden Ivey. Those are kind of the main 4. Right now, I'm kind of in the middle of adding a 5th one kind of to that group, and that's Shaedon Sharpe. There's a lot of unknowns with Shaedon Sharpe, so that might be a reason that you kind of, take a step back. But talent-wise, he has the obvious potential to be in that group. So that's kind of where I'm at the top tier. And then there are plenty of others. You've got AJ Griffin, who I'm a big fan of. I know a lot of people have soured on for different reasons, but if you watch him, pre-college and just what I think he can do projection-wise, I really like him. And you've got Jalen Duren, Ben Mathurin, Keegan Murray, Johnny Davis, guys like that who go into the middle of the lottery and back end of it that round out what's really a solid class. So
you mentioned the elephant in the room there, Shaedon Sharpe, right? He obviously has made the announcement he's going to go back to Kentucky, which I thought we all kind of expected. When you have top 6, top 7 money staring you at the face, you take the money and you run. We all want to act like, oh, Shaedon Sharpe, like me, for instance. I'm not really deep into watching this prospect. Oh, Shaedon Sharpe could go fight. I don't know shit about Shaedon Sharpe, right? I think a lot of people don't. What can you tell us about Shaedon, considering that none of us have watched him play college basketball before?
Yeah, so Shaedon Sharpe, out of Canada, he's listed at 6'4", but he looks way bigger. I've seen him in interviews say that he's 6'4" himself, but he looks about 6'6", to be honest. Really talented scorer, somebody who can really give buckets and create space on the perimeter. Defensively, he's been solid for a lot of moments. Really good athlete, especially in space. That really pops. And, just in general, kind of, you look at the modern NBA, these 2 guards, you've got your Zach LaVine's kind of similar in that what Jalen Green is, Anthony Edwards. Just looking back at these last couple drafts, he kind of fits in somewhere in that mold as a player. And I think as we get closer to the draft, hopefully we'll be able to see him in some different kind of situations, maybe a workout that's not completely highlight based, but other than that, all you have to look off of is what he did in the EYBL and some other things with Dream City Christian when he was in high school. So that's all that we have to go off of. And as you guys know, we've seen plenty of high level, highly touted prospects take big falls. Even this year, you got Patrick Baldwin Jr. Last year, you have BJ Boston. Even on the flip side of that, you've got a guy like Zaire Williams who didn't have a great season at Stanford, but still ends up going 10th. So it's kind of a interesting thing to talk about. And you look back at the history of all the number 1 prospects in the high school class, most of the majority of them end up going in the lottery, even after their college seasons. So, just kind of have a lot of things to juggle with him.
So I realize this is comparing apples to oranges because the 4 guys I'm going to ask you about, one of the guys in Shaedon Sharpe, we pretty much have high school tape, nothing else. Some of the other guys I'm going to ask you about as we compare these, we have a bunch of NBA tape. But looking at this upcoming class and last year's class, there was really 2 consensus guards that were like the top 2 guards. You had Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs last year. You've got Jaden Ivey and Shaedon Sharpe in this class. So again, in a vacuum, I like to ask these questions in a vacuum. When you look at those 4 guys, just who they were coming into the draft, where do you kind of rank those guys in terms of prospects overall?
Yeah, so I think Jalen Green would be number 1. That's how I felt last year. I felt like there was a little bit of a separation between him and Jalen Suggs, and also there was a little bit of separation between him and Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley for me, but I still kind of put him in that top tier with them. And then we would go with pre-draft. I would probably say it's really close between Jalen Suggs and Jaden Ivey. If they were in the same class, I'm not 100% sure where I would go. But it is close. And then Shaedon Sharpe would probably be last for me, just because there is so much unknowns. And from this kind of area that we sit, we don't get to bring him in for workouts or, put him through drills and ask him about his own work ethic and things of that nature. So he would have to be last, but he does have a lot of talent.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned Cade. I hadn't forgot about him. He's the obvious number 1. Like, there's no need to even throw his name in that group. No, I agree. I do think there's a lot more similarities between Jalen Green and Shaedon Sharpe than people are talking about. I think they've got very similar games based on the tape that we have. Like, looking at Jalen Green in high school, the top guy in his class. Same thing with Shaedon. I think that, and in a similar role, if he were to go to Oklahoma City, he could look a lot like Jalen Green did this year in Houston.
Yeah, I think the difference between those two is Jalen Green is a little bit quicker of an athlete. He's able to create a little bit more separation and get downhill easier. I think that's something that Shaedon will have to work on and be more diligent about heading into the next level. But you're right there in terms of like shot creators, where they play on the perimeter, being able to kind of flow in and out on and off the ball. That's something that you could see happening with Shaedon as well.
Awesome. Let's transition over to a little more Thunder-centric 2022 stuff. Currently, we're still awaiting the draft lottery, obviously, May 17th. But the Thunder currently have the 4th best odds and the 12th best odds, courtesy of the Los Angeles Clippers. Keonjay, let's imagine that the lottery just stays static and everyone where they're at is where they're going to be at right now, according to record. So the Thunder end up with pick 4 and pick 12. For the Thunder specifically, who do you like at 4 and 12 for them?
Yeah, so they get put in a pretty interesting spot, depending on where they go with the top 3, because you ask anybody, they'll give you a different order of those top 4 kind of guys that we've kind of come to agreement on. But if that guy happens to be Jaden Ivey at 4, I would probably go in the Shaedon Sharpe direction, just because I think that he's more of a seamless fit with what Shai and Josh Giddy do. He doesn't need the ball as much. That's just kind of be my opinion on it. And I think that him and Ivy are close enough as prospects to make that decision. The other side of that, so at number 12, I see Jalen Durant going there a lot of the time. I'm actually way higher on him than number 12, so I think that would be kind of a steal at that point. But that's one of the main targets for the Thunder in this draft, obviously, to get more of something at the center spot, whether that's Jalen Durant, who is the best traditional center in the class, or that's somewhere later with 30 and 34. You've got guys like Mark Williams, Ishmael Kamagate, Walker Kessler, Christian Koloko, just kind of all spread out through that late teens to early 30s kind of position. So, that's kind of where I would go, the direction I would go with them. But if something else, happens in that top 4, I really like Jabari for the Thunder. If he's able to go 4th, I don't know if that's going to happen, but if it did, that'd be my number 1 pick for this Thunder team. And then from there, you kind of go, wherever at 12 and then figure the rest out.
So 4 and 12 aside, who is the most like, this is an OKC player in this draft? Like, when you look up and down the list, it doesn't have to be in the lottery. Is there a player that just fits what they're trying to do and fits the Sam Presti mold in your eyes?
I think there's a few. I would say Ousmane Dieng comes to mind on that. Obviously, long, athletic. He can handle it. He can pass it. He's really raw. He take a couple years to really make a huge impact, but he screams everything that Presti has shown that he likes in a player recently. I think Josh Minot out of Memphis could be a guy that they target. And another one that's kind of a sleeper and that I think we'll hear more of over these next coming weeks, and if he ends up staying in the draft, is Leonard Miller out of Canada. 6'11" forward / wing, super raw lefty. He had a really good showing at the Nike Hoop Summit all week, both in the game and in the practices. He's someone definitely to watch. He still has Kentucky and Arizona on his college list. He still has college eligibility as well. But he is somebody that I think that, depending on where his draft range is, that he'll be one of their targets. And I wouldn't be surprised if they, take him way higher than people expect, just because that's how Presti kind of goes. So
if you're from Canada, you got a chance to be on this team.
I was about to say, you mentioned 3 guys, and 2 of the 3 are not American, which is right up Sam Presti's alley, apparently. So, Keandre, let's play with the dream scenario for a second. Okay, the Thunder do have 2 lottery picks. Last year, they had a chance to land 2 top 5 picks. Obviously, did not happen. This year, both of their picks have a chance to jump. Let's imagine that the basketball gods smile upon Sam Presti, and on lottery night, they hear their name called at 1 and 2. Okay, there's like I don't know, it's like a 0.7% chance that happens, but let's just imagine for a second. If the Thunder land at 1 and 2 in this draft and get to make the 2 first selections, who do you think they should go with? Like, if Sam Presti called Keandre and was like, hey, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, but I love your draft videos. Who would you draft? Who do you think the Thunder should take at 1 and 2 back to back?
This is a tough one. Because I really like what Jabari could bring to the table for this team. But also, you've got Chet there. You've got Paulo, who I have as my number 1 player.
There's some positional overlap there too.
Yeah. So I think that I would go with, I don't know. Because whoever I'm going to say, I'm going to think about it later. I'm going to be like, oh, I should have went with the other direction. Like that justification doesn't make sense. But just kind of going off top, I think I would go with Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren.
Okay.
I think that they really fit with what they have going on. And yeah, that's what I would go with. Without saying too much, that's going to like put me in a hole. That's just what I would go with.
I think that fit would be incredibly fun. You run Shea, Lou, Josh, and then Smith Jr. and Holmgren as your front court. Your front court might weigh 200 pounds combined, but that'd be a really, really fun lineup. So I know Nick's chomping at the bit here. So before we get out of here, Keandre, we want to do a quick exercise with you. So for those of you watching on the stream, you get the visual along with this as well. I am going to stream to the screen here, Tankathon. Keandre, we like to do this on our show every now and then. I am going to sim a Tankathon lottery. We're going to let it land. And just real quick, Keandre gets first pick, Nick gets second, I get third, and we'll just keep rotating. Let's just burn through the lottery real quick and see who ends up with who. Keandre, are you cool with this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's hit the spin and see what we got. All right, Keandre, you were first up. The Portland Trailblazers got number 1.
Portland Trailblazers. Another interesting pick here. I think I'm going to go with the guy that I didn't go with earlier, and that's Paolo Banchero. I really like what he could bring to the table playing alongside Damian Lillard. I think that'd be perfect for him, being able to make decisions off of Dame, kind of get some of that space to create and do things of that nature. Obviously, you've got other good choices. Chet would be good here as well, just bringing that defense and rim protection and things like that. But I'm going with Paolo. Pacific Northwest gets to stay, go back home. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Nick, you got San Antonio at 2.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer Chet decision, in my opinion. I mean, what he does and what the San Antonio front office values, like it's a match made in heaven.
I got Orlando at 3. This is an interesting one for me because Orlando has a lot of young guys, but I think a lot of them are just kind of middling and they're trying to figure out what to do. Am I crazy to think that I like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Suggs together? I think that might be the pick here. I mean, they have so many young guards, but I just think they have so many middling young guards that they need someone to set them apart. I'm going Jaden Ivey at 3. Keandre, you got 4, which is OKC.
OKC at 4, so I guess that leaves Jabari Smith, right? So they got
there you go, the one that you said earlier. It all comes to fruition, man.
Yeah.
Nick, you got Houston at 5.
That's tough. This is where I think maybe they don't take Shaedon Sharpe. I don't know. I like I said, there's overlap with Jalen Green. I think they'd be awesome together, but is that what Houston wants to do moving forward? I don't know. Maybe we go. I'm not high on this guy, but I think it's a position of need. Maybe you go Keegan Murray at 5.
Okay, very good. I've got Detroit at 6. We're putting Shaedon Sharpe and Cade Cunningham together. I think that is a beautiful fit. We'll figure out what the hell to do with I'm forgetting the kid's name now. Who did they take in the lottery 2 years ago? French point guard Killian Hayes. We'll figure out what to do with Killian Hayes later. Keandre, you have Indiana at 7.
Indiana at 7. Indiana at 7. I think that we'll go with AJ Griffin. I really like his upside. I think he's got some untapped creation potential. I'm betting on him being a better athlete, kind of getting back to that high school level. So yeah, that's the pick here.
Nick, you have Sacramento at 8.
Yeah, I'm with you, Keandre. I'm a lot higher on Jalen Duren. I keep seeing him going 11, 12, 13. I don't see it. I'm having him go here 8.
All right. A Sabonis and Duren front court. I have the New Orleans Pelicans via the LA Lakers at 9. Oh, I'm struggling to even remember who we still have on the board here. I'll go Johnny Davis here. The Pelicans, they have CJ. Let's throw Johnny Davis there as well. He can learn behind CJ. They could even share the backcourt together. We'll go Johnny Davis at 9, which puts Keandre on the board at 10 with Washington.
10, Washington. I think I'm going to go with – there's a couple of different directions we could go in. I'm going to go with Tari Eason. Versatile forward, can do a lot of things. Put him in Washington. You kind of just figure out the rest of the stuff fit and all that kind of later.
Nick, you have the New York Knicks at 11. Perfect for you.
This is going to be a statement that contradicts itself. I think that the Knicks have a bunch of forwards that have either potential or they're already good, but I'm still going to have them go Jeremy Sohan here. I think they need a guy that can do a little bit of everything. I think that's exactly what Jeremy is. I don't know if he'll ever be elite or a star at any one thing, but I think that his weaknesses are very, very limited. And New York needs a guy that can contribute now if they're going to try to make the playoffs next season and make this, not a 2, 3, 4 year playoff drought, just a quick 1 year.
I have the OKC pick at 12. I might make Nick mad here because I'm not going to take Ben Mathurin. I like Dyson Daniels. Yeah, it was inevitable we were going to let someone slip. I like Dyson Daniels at 12. We talked about guys that we think Sam Presti will like in this draft. Dyson Daniels just screams that to me. So I'm going Dyson at 12. Keandre, you have the Charlotte Hornets at 13.
13. Charlotte Hornets at 13. Man. So obviously they need a center. The guy that they would want is Jalen Duren.
You got Mark Williams on the board still?
You do have Mark Williams. I'm not super high on him in the lottery. I know a lot of people have moved that direction. But you know what? For the sake of this, we might as well just go ahead and take Mark Williams because it fits there. And they don't play the rookies, so at least he might have some opportunities for minutes. Well, maybe they might without James Borrego. So
there you go.
Mark Williams, you go, Charlotte.
Nick, you get the last pick in the lottery, 14, the Cleveland Cavs.
Gosh, well, I have Ben Mather in 6 or 7 on my big board right now, and I'm not going to take him here, which is, again, contradictory. But for Cleveland, I'm gonna have them taking a swing on a guy, although I don't think they need a guard. I'm super high on Blake Wesley. I think he's a bucket. I think that Cleveland has a lot of guys that can score, but do they keep Colin Sexton? They keep some of these other guys off the bench that can score points. Karis LeVert, for example. I don't know. I like Blake Wesley a lot. He's kind of like the Bones Highland, Trey Mann type guy in this class to me. Just he'll score a bunch of points if he gets minutes in the NBA, and I think that he can do that in Cleveland.
Nice. I think Ochai Agbaji is just the seamless fit at Cleveland for me. That's an interesting one. Awesome. Well, we've kept Keandre for more than enough time. Keandre, before we get out of here, will you please plug where everyone can find your scouting videos, follow your thoughts, etc.?
Yeah, so you can follow me on YouTube at Hoop Intellect. Just search it up and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm on Twitter at Hoop Intellect with 3 L's. On Instagram, Hoop Intellect. I share some things on there from time to time as well. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me.
Awesome. Did someone else have Hoop Intellect on Twitter, so you had to throw a third L in there?
Yeah, I was completely unaware, and then when I tried to make the name, it said that was taken. I was like,
"Oh, you should have tried to buy it from him."
He hasn't been active for like 5 years. So
we had the same thing when we started at the Uncontested. We had to throw an underscore, and the guy that had the Uncontested hadn't tweeted since 2014. So.
Yeah.
What can you do? Awesome. Well, Keandre, thank you again for joining us, man. We really, really appreciate you. Everyone, make sure you go watch Keandre's videos because they are absolutely incredible. You will learn so much and be so much more knowledgeable around all your friends for the NBA draft. We'll be back with you guys again Wednesday night. Make sure you join us 8 p.m. Central Time here on YouTube. And we'll be hosting a Twitter space tomorrow, Monday, probably the day you're listening to this podcast. So check us out there as well. Go follow Keandre on all socials and subscribe to his YouTube channel. We will talk to you guys soon. Until then, and as always, thunder up.